In this video, I'm going to try to answer the question, does sucralose break a fast? Sucralose, also known as Splenda in some cases, does it break your fast? And kind of the bottom line is that you might be okay using it if you can get away with it, so to speak. In other words, if you can tolerate it, but that it has a variety of potential downsides supported by varying levels of research evidence. And I'm going to explain those a little bit in this video. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So first of all, what about if you have these Splenda packets or whatever, is that just pure sucralose? The answer is no. They actually mix it with sugar, dextrose, a little bit of dextrose, and then this carb thing called maltodextrin. So you're not actually just getting sucralose if you're using those packets. So that's one thing to consider is, so if you're going to use a lot of it, then you're actually consuming sugar. And if you use enough, then it could be a lot of sugar. And so then you're definitely breaking your fast in that case if you're using a lot of sugar. But if you're somehow avoiding having either a large amount or you're using a different version that's not mixed with the sugar and stuff, then what's the story on that? So sucralose, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but it's actually the most popular artificial sweetener in the United States. So it's kind of everywhere. Aspartame is another really, really common one that's in most of the diet soda and stuff, but sucralose is in tons and tons and tons of other stuff. So will it break your fast? Well, whether something breaks your fast, that's kind of subjective within reason. And the reason I say that is because it kind of depends on what your goals are. So let me share a few common goals and whether sucralose would interfere with those. So when people are fasting, they're often trying to reduce body fat, improve blood sugar, improve insulin, maybe control their hunger, maybe boost their ketone levels or something like that. So let's go through each one of those and talk about it just a little bit. So what if you're trying to reduce body fat and you use sucralose during fasting? Well, if you can tolerate it, you'll probably still continue to lose body fat. So in the short run, it's probably okay, again, if you can tolerate it. Why do I say if you can tolerate it? Because whenever you have a sweetener like that, it's going to make you crave more sweet stuff, or for a lot of people it does. And then you might want to have more and more and more, or have something else, or break your fast early, or whatever. But if you're able to continue fasting, no problem, then yeah, you can certainly still reduce body fat through fasting. Now, there's weak evidence, let's put it that way, that long-term use of sucralose leads to weight gain. And when I say weak evidence, because this is not like a randomized controlled trial design, this is, I think, just epidemiological research. And I linked all the studies in the blog version of this, and I'll put a link below to that. So if you want to look at any of the research that I'm kind of referencing, I'm not going to get into all the details, but I'll link to the blog post if you want to check that out. So there's kind of long-term epidemiological research that says sucralose is not good for you. It might make you fatter and get diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not like, that doesn't prove that that's the cause. It might just be a correlation. But there is some other research and whatnot showing that when you use artificial sweeteners, you tend to feel less satisfied, and as a result, you may crave more stuff afterwards. So those are some of the issues that come up. Now, what about blood sugar? What if your main goal is to improve your blood sugar and you're using sucralose? Well, it's pretty much the same as reducing body fat. And that is that in the short term, there's not really any reliable evidence that sucralose would raise blood sugar. In fact, there's evidence that it doesn't. But there's animal studies showing that using sucralose makes them glucose intolerant. So that would mean it would indirectly raise blood sugar. And so, yeah, like there's a potential there, but it's not proven. So in other words, it might affect your gut bacteria or affect something else that might make it so you don't process glucose as effectively. Is that going to spike your blood sugar during a fast? No, but it might have some detrimental effects as it relates to blood sugar in the long run. Now, does sucralose spike insulin? What about insulin specifically? So basically, I found some studies that say that sucralose doesn't seem to directly affect insulin levels in a significant way. And then some other studies, actually, at least some of them were in humans, that showed that longer term use of sucralose seemed to make people less insulin sensitive. So kind of contributed to what's called insulin resistance. Now, is that causal? Is that actually causing that? Or are there some other variables going on that they didn't adequately control for or whatever? I don't know. It's an interesting question. And I don't think those were in the context of fasting, but they were just in general, if people were using sucralose, seemed to maybe make them less insulin sensitive. So that's kind of the big picture here, is like Sucralose probably isn't that big of a deal in the short run if you can tolerate it during a fast, but it seems like it's probably not great for you in the long run, most likely. Does sucralose affect your ketone levels while fasting? So I've done a bunch of prolonged fasts. Sometimes I've used sucralose or other sweeteners, and my ketones stay super high. So I'm not too worried about that personally, and I don't think there's any research that really talks about it. Now, here's the big elephant in the room that I've already alluded to, and that is, what if you're fasting to try to control your hunger levels and you use sucralose? Well, you're probably shooting yourself in the foot just a little bit. And that's because, these sweeteners, they do stimulate cravings. So, for example, there was a specific study where they looked at that, and then these artificial sweeteners did seem to increase cravings for sweets. And then Megan Ramos, she was on my podcast back in episode 14. She specifically said that sweeteners like this, but maybe not sucralose specifically, but just like sweeteners really throw people off a lot when they're coaching people through fasting. So that's something really significant to consider. So can you get a lot of health benefits from fasting, even if you're drinking a bunch of Splenda sweetened stuff, a bunch of sucralose? Yeah, I think you can, but there may be some detrimental effects going on in the background from that sucralose. So, is it still good to fast with the sucralose versus not fasting at all? Probably, but it's definitely doesn't seem to be ideal for your health. So that's kind of the bottom line. If you want to see a more complete discussion about what breaks a fast and what doesn't, here's a video where I go over a bunch of different things and talk about each one in turn. And here's a video, if you're kind of a beginner with fasting, I go over a 2-step process, how to start intermittent fasting in 2 easy steps, possibly the best way to get started. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.